The sun hung low over the western desert, a blood-red orb sinking into the endless dunes like a dying god. Dust swirled in choking clouds, carrying the acrid tang of sweat and fear. You hear it first, the thunder of hooves, the clash of bronze, the screams piercing the haze. Then shapes emerge, chariots slicing through the chaos, arrows hissing like vengeful serpents. At the center, a figure towers, his arms raised in triumph, his enemies crumbling before him. Women huddle in ox carts, their faces streaked with grime, clutching children as the world they knew shatters. One young woman, her hair matted and eyes wide with terror, locks gaze with the conqueror. She doesn't know yet, but her fate is sealed, not in battle, but in the long shadow that follows. The air thickens with the metallic bite of spilled life, and as the victors drag their prizes away, the desert swallows the echoes. But this victory hides a darker design, one that would echo through millennia, buried in fragile scrolls until the sands gave them up. What you're about to hear involves the systematic subjugation of captives, including women forced into servitude and humiliation. These events are documented in ancient records, but they're deeply disturbing. If you need to step away, that's fine. For those who stay, we'll focus on the machinery behind it all, not just the pain, but the calculated system that turned people into tools of empire. This wasn't random cruelty. This was a calculated engine of control, grinding down entire tribes to fuel Egypt's fading glory. Picture the Nile Valley in the 12th century before the Common Era, a land of towering temples and fertile fields, but one teetering on the edge. The New Kingdom, once a beacon of power, now faced waves of invaders crashing against its borders like the sea against cliffs. Ramses III, the second pharaoh of the 20th Dynasty, stepped into this storm. He wasn't just a king, he was the last bulwark against chaos, defending Egypt from Libyans in the west and mysterious sea raiders from the north. But his victories came at a cost, not only in blood on the battlefield, but in the lives reshaped in their wake. The Libyans, nomadic tribes pushed by drought and desperation, sought fertile lands in the delta. Ramses met them with force, twice crushing their advances. Why does this matter now? Because buried in a papyrus from his era lies a glimpse into how empires maintain dominance, not through swords alone, but through breaking spirits and rewriting futures. It's a story that whispers warnings about power's hidden toll, reminding us that history's heroes often cast long, dark shadows. The sands of Egypt's western frontier whispered secrets long before Ramses III claimed the throne. The land stretched vast and unforgiving, a sea of dunes where nomadic tribes roamed, herding cattle and seeking oases amid the heat's merciless grip. These were the Libyans, fierce, tattooed warriors with flowing robes and curved swords. Tribes like the Libu and Meshwesh, bound by blood and survival. Their world was one of shifting alliances, where the desert's harsh rhythm dictated life, migrate or perish. But as climates grew drier and pastures thinned, their eyes turned east, toward the Nile's green promise. Egypt, the black land of abundance, had long eyed them warily. Earlier pharaohs like Meryey had repelled incursions, but the pressure built like a storm on the horizon. Ramses III wasn't forged in isolation. Born Uzurmatre Meryamun, powerful is the justice of Re, beloved of Amun. He rose in a time of turmoil. His father, Setnakte, had wrested the throne from chaos after the 19th Dynasty's collapse, a brief reign spent stabilizing a fractured kingdom. A young Ramses, perhaps in his 20s when he ascended around 1186 BCE, inherited a realm scarred by internal strife and external threats. Economic woes gnawed at the edges, grain shortages, corrupt officials, a treasury strained by endless building projects. Yet he modeled himself after the great Ramses II, adopting grand titles and commissioning monuments to proclaim his might. His early years honed a warrior's edge, Campaigns in Nubia and Syria taught him the art of command, the thrill of chariot charges, the sting of losses that fueled resolve. One formative scar stood out, the growing Libyan menace. These weren't mere raiders, but entire peoples on the move, families in tow, driven by famine's cruel hand. In Ramses' fifth year, they struck hard. A coalition under a chief whose name echoed in Egyptian records, Meryey, leader of the Libu. He united tribes, forging an alliance that swept toward the delta like a sandstorm. Ramses, ever vigilant, had fortified the western forts, mustering troops from across the land. The clash came in the western oases, a brutal melee where Egyptian discipline met Libyan ferocity. Ramses' archers rained death from afar, chariots carving through ranks. Meryey fell, his forces shattered, but victory wasn't enough. Ramses saw the threat's root, desperation breeding endless waves. He needed to break not just armies, but wills. And then the pivot happened. In the aftermath, as captives were herded like cattle, Ramses decreed their fate. Not wholesale slaughter, that would waste resources. Instead, integration into the machine. Leaders branded with his name, families dispersed, women and children folded into Egypt's fabric. This wasn't mercy, it was strategy, turning enemies into servants, their labor bolstering the temples and fields. The desert's whisper became a roar in his mind. Control the people, control the border. It crystallized his approach, a blueprint for the greater trials ahead. The air shimmered with heat as Ramses' chariot thundered across the plain, the taste of dust bitter on his tongue. Banners of Amun fluttered high, the god's falcon eyes seeming to watch from above. Ahead, the Libyan lines wavered, warriors with plumed helmets, their skin etched in tribal marks, shields raised in defiance. Meryey stood at their heart, a towering figure barking orders, his voice lost in the din. But the Egyptians advanced relentlessly, a wall of bronze and resolve. She was there amid the chaos, a young Libyan woman we'll call Tia, daughter of a herder, her world upended, barely past her 18th summer. She'd known the freedom of open skies, tending flocks with her kin, stories of ancestors shared around flickering fires. Now, as arrows flew and men fell, she clutched her younger siblings in the ox cart's shadow, heart pounding like a trapped bird. The battle surged around them, a whirlwind of screams and clashing metal. Egyptian soldiers, faces grim under linen helmets, pressed forward. One, a grizzled veteran with scars mapping his arms, glanced her way amid the fray, his eyes holding not hatred, but the weary duty of conquest. Tension built like a drawn bow. Ramses signaled the charge, his voice booming over the roar. For Amun in Egypt! Chariots plunged in, wheels churning sand to blood. Meryey rallied his men, swinging his blade in wide arcs, felling two foes before an arrow found his shoulder. The Libyans buckled, retreating in disarray. Tia watched in horror as warriors dragged the wounded away, her father's form limp among them. The Egyptians closed in, ropes ready, commands sharp as daggers. In that shattering moment, the demand came, surrender or perish. Meryey, bloodied but unbowed, spat defiance, sealing his end, a spear thrust, and he crumpled. Tia and the others were rounded up, wrists bound, tears carving paths through dust-caked faces. The air reeked of iron and sweat, the ground a tapestry of fallen. Ramses surveyed the field, his expression a mask of triumph laced with calculation. What followed wasn't the blade's swift mercy. Tia felt rough hands pull her from the cart, her cries lost in the victor's shouts, implied in the records. The horror unfolded, not detailed in gore, but in the cold efficiency of subjugation. Women separated, children wailed, all marked as spoils. Ramses' decree echoed, brand them, enslave them, make them Egypt's. She awoke in chains, the Nile's banks a blur through tear-stung eyes. This wasn't about one girl, it was the machine in motion, captives funneled into temples, their labor rebuilding what war tore down. Historians note how such systems sustained empires, turning foes into fuel. A modern parallel flickers, conquered peoples absorbed, their cultures eroded, much like colonial auras where assimilation masked erasure. But here, in the Delta's green embrace, Tia glimpsed the irony. The fertile land they sought now bound them in servitude. The machine didn't stop at one victory. It hungered, gears turning with relentless precision. 6 years later, the Libyans rose again, stronger, under new chiefs, tribes like the Meshwesh. Their numbers swelled by desperation. They pushed deeper, aiming for the heart of the Delta, villages burning in their wake. Ramses, now seasoned, anticipated the surge. He fortified lines, drilled troops, his intelligence network, spies in desert garb, whispering of movements. Shift to the soldier's eyes, that veteran from the first clash. He'd seen the system's underbelly, captives marched in, branded like cattle, women assigned to weaving halls or worse. Now, atop a watchtower, he spotted the dust cloud heralding the horde. Horns blared, ranks formed. The battle erupted in the Wadi Natrun salty flats, a different arena, flat, unforgiving, where chariots reigned supreme. Ramses led from the front, his chariot a blur of gold and speed. Libyans charged in waves, their curved blades flashing, but Egyptian bows sang death. The veteran fought mechanically, his spear finding flesh, mind numb to the cries. Amid the melee, he saw families again, women shielding young ones, carts overturned. One chief fell, his body trampled, another rallied, only to be cut down. As the sun dipped, the field lay strewn with the defeated. Captives knelt, heads bowed. The veteran watched as overseers moved in, ropes coiling like serpents, whispers among the troops, more slaves for the temples, more hands for the fields. But a breather here, the quiet irony of a Libyan child, wide-eyed, clutching a carved toy amid the ruin, a tiny spark of innocence in the machine's maw. The escalation revealed the system's core. Reports flowed up the chain, from scouts to generals to pharaoh. Incentives greased the wheels, soldiers rewarded with land, officials with gold. Numbers swelled not in cold counts, but in emptied villages, tribes scattered like chaff. One specific echo, a captured elder, his tales of lost homes, a dark contrast to Egypt's gleaming pylons. The climax built slowly, time stretching like taut bowstring. In the 11th year, the Libyans' final push, a massive host, families trailing, a migration turned invasion. Ramses' army waited in the western delta, traps set. The air hummed with tension, the scent of Nile mud mingling with fear's sharp edge. Sounds amplified, distant war cries, the creak of chariots, the veteran's steady breath. The charge came at dawn, Libyans pouring like a flood. Ramses unleashed hell, archers from flanks, infantry holding center. The veteran plunged in, blade biting, blood warm on his skin. Amid it, Tia, now a servant in a temple, heard rumors of the battle, her heart twisting at echoes of her past. The peak, Ramses' chariot pierced the line, his presence shattering morale. A chief's stand, brief and futile, ended in dust. The system cracked not the invaders, but their hope. Survivors herded, the machine absorbing all. Implication heavy. Women led away. Futures rewritten in ink of decree. What broke? For Ramses. Overreach loomed. For captives. Spirits bent, but not always shattered. Resistance flickered. A hidden right. A whispered name. Transition to the after. The wars won, but the cost mounting. In the quiet after the storm, Ramses' fate twisted. Internal rot festered, harem plots, a wife's ambition, a son's greed, assassin struck, his throat slit in shadows, the machine claiming its maker, survivors scattered, communities rebuilt in fragments, power shifted to weaker heirs, the 20th Dynasty crumbling. Long-term, Egypt's borders shrank, Libyan descendants rising as pharaohs centuries later, an ironic twist, the conquered becoming kings. The empire that crushed tribes sowed seeds of its decline, documents meant to glorify now exposing the cracks. Modern eyes uncovered it all. In the 19th century, explorers like Anthony Harris unearthed the papyrus near Medinet Habu, a fragile roll, 41 meters long, detailing endowments and victories. Harris, a collector with a keen eye, smuggled it out, its secret spilling forth. Scholars like James Henry Breasted translated it, revealing the system's blueprint. Archaeological digs at forts like Zawiyet el Rakam showed peaceful interactions too. Cattle bones and tools hinting at integration beyond brutality. Why does it echo? It teaches power's double edge. Control breeds resentment. Assimilation erases but also transforms. In today's fractured world, parallels abound. Migrations met with walls, cultures clashing in borderlands. The universal truth: empires rise on broken backs, but history remembers the whispers of the oppressed. Back to that desert clash, the sun now set, stars pricking the velvet sky. What changed? The Libyans, meant to vanish, lingered in bloodlines and stories. Tia, if she survived, might have borne children blending worlds. Her legacy in the Nile's flow. They were meant to disappear, but they didn't. Scrolled in papyrus, etched in stone, their echoes endure. And now, they're here with you, because you chose to listen. If this tale stirred something, drop a comment below, share what part hit hardest. In the end, it's the quiet endurance that outlasts the roar.